name is Carl Matzenbacher. I serve on the committee that set up this lecture series, so if anybody wants to give us input on the fall and next spring, we'd appreciate that. Today it's a pleasure to introduce Joseph Howell, who is a program coordinator with the LSU AgCenter, and I work for the AgCenter, and I appreciate the opportunities that they give to faculty and a lot of things that go on around the world, and I'm actually interested to hear what he's going to talk about, because there's a lot of things that they do that I don't really know about. So with that, I'll let Joseph start his seminar.
I would also like for Michelle to introduce herself. She works with me, and she's also a program coordinator.
Hi, I'm Michelle Zepka. I work with Joe, like he mentioned. I'm just going to talk about later in the presentation about a couple internship programs that we have for students that are in other universities around the world.
The title today is Ethics and Global Food Security, the LSU AgCenter's contribution. I'm going to talk mostly about what we're doing. I'll say a couple of words about ethics first. Jonathan Hutchin selected this title, and I asked him several times, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by ethics? And I went online, and ethics is also known as moral philosophy. It's a branch of philosophy which seeks to address questions of morality. It's concerned with concepts like good and bad, right and wrong, justice, injustice, virtue, vice, etc. And I came up with a second definition: the study of principles relating to right and wrong conduct, standards that govern the conduct of a person, especially a member of a profession. And I think the second one is a little bit more in line with what we're trying to do when we talk about being ethical and training people to carry out work that we consider to be the best conduct for that particular type of work in agriculture. I'll talk a little bit more as we go on about why I'm by myself. Jonathan is in Washington. Lajma Balupalai is in, our director, is in Armenia, and we also have a person in India today. So I just click on, where do I click on this? There we go. Oh, right there, okay. The LSU AgCenter's mission is to provide the people of Louisiana with research-based educational information that will improve their lives and economic well-being. And I think those of us who work in the AgCenter often see the words innovate, educate, improve lives. And we are also the link between research and extension because of the extensive system of research stations throughout the state. The international programs does have a website. It's up there on the board, and I have a few if people are interested. I can pass out a few of these. It gives the website on it. Anybody interested? Anybody else?
No.
I just have a few here. I don't have too many. I just printed out a few copies. So that if you, when you have more time, you can go look up, find out more about us, what we're doing. But it's not difficult to Google international programs, LSU AgCenter, and eventually you'll come to our website. You'll notice on the website there are different people, and then there's a map of the world. And of course we're in North America, we're in Louisiana, we have programs in Central America, in Africa, and in Asia, and in Eurasia, if you consider the Caucasus, and Eastern Europe. International programs internationalize the LSU AgCenter's mission and provides opportunity to apply land-grant model on a global environment. This is a reminder of the faculty of the AgCenter that on Thursday morning, a week from today, on Thursday morning, there's going to be a meeting at Efferson Hall to discuss the progress that's been made in globalization so far in the past year. So those of you that are on the faculty, this is an opportunity to
This is the one
participate.
Provost Merget, the one by the provost?
Yes.
Yes, Provost Merget will be giving the speech, and
Will be
she's
giving-
talking about the flagship agenda and how the internationalization aspect is important to really improving the flagship agenda.
So this is a joint LSU AgCenter, LSU A&M internationalization effort. And that particular meeting is focusing on the participation throughout the university. Will take place a week from today, but it'll be in the morning, 8:30, right? It's 8:30.
Yes, 8:30.
How often does that group meet?
This activity started just over a year ago. It was the 17th of February. The provost met with a number of faculty in Jefferson Hall. And over the past year, a number of activities have taken place, surveys and so forth on the campus. The problem is this is a very large university, but unfortunately at times, or very often I should say, more often than not, people don't know what other people are doing. And not too long ago, 2 different groups from LSU showed up in China at the same time in the same place, and they didn't know that they were going to be there at the same time in the same place. All they were doing different things. And unfortunately, maybe it would have been a little bit better for both of them if they had worked together on that trip, rather than each doing their own thing, so to speak. So part of this activity, this globalization activity, is so that people share more, there's more of a network, people have a better understanding of who's doing what where. And of course the provost is interested in focusing on certain parts of the world, see where the areas of concentration are, so those areas can be strengthened. That's all something for next week that will be discussed more in detail at that particular meeting for faculty and staff. For the general public, that is just for your general information. Okay, I don't want to jump ahead too far. Okay, allow LSU's community and the LA population to globalize their services toward food security. Now we jump back 49 years, and also we're responding to the opportunities from the Foreign Assistance Acts of 1961, which reorganized the U.S. foreign assistance, separating military and non-military aid, and mandated the creation of the United States Agency for International Development. This was one of the first things that President Kennedy did when he became president. Now, I just mentioned my colleague Jonathan Hubson is not present with us. He is in Washington. Last month he was in Liberia with another colleague, Dr. Walter Wiles. And they are in Liberia at Connington University. And they're working on a strategic plan to develop that university, since it's that country's undergone many years of warfare. As I mentioned, also Dr. Lachman Balupalai is in Armenia, and then Dr. Satish Verma is in India. Now, the picture we see is on the left is, you can see Jonathan is right in the middle there, and he is over again on the right, and that was the nominal group process that he led for participants at that university, and this was just a little over a month ago, 3rd week of January. Now today, he is in Washington, and this is what people in Washington will see at the beginning of a PowerPoint that's going to be presented concerning that strategic plan. And it's the revitalization of agricultural, education, research, and outreach programs at Connington University to ensure sustainable food security in Liberia. We're partnering with Southern University, and of course you can see over the gateway, Connington University. So that's a presentation taking place today in Washington. I mentioned Dr. Balupalai is in Armenia. Talked to him just a few minutes ago, and that particular program is with the USDA. The one that Jonathan's involved with is USAID, Higher Education Initiative for Africa. And what the program in Armenia is called Technical Assistance Program to Support the Armenian Food Safety System. And this gets back into standards, what are the best practices so that people have the healthiest food that is nourishing and will not make them sick. Sometimes food's nourishing, but if it's not properly prepared, you can get sick, as we all know. This is just a view taken out of a report that we recently received. It shows the number of farmers that are being helped, and then there is processing as well. Processors are also involved in this program, so it's part of the value chain. If we look at the cattle there, they don't look quite like ours, but this is Armenia, so it's a different country and different breeds and breeding conditions. Institutional history and operationalization mandate. Concept and mission. Empowering through capacity building. In the example that we just saw in Liberia, it's through a university, building the capacity of that university. We're working with a local organization in Armenia so that it has the capacity, it has people who are trained, that are trained and certified in helping farmers, dairy people, meat processors, other types of food processing, so that they can have the standards that will ensure that the food has a long shelf life. People can buy it, and then they will not have to worry about it going bad quickly because it's been well processed. Internationally recognized standards. And then also the concern that when these standards are maintained, put in place, monitored, there can be international marketing. And all of this will contribute to sustainability because you have much larger market for whatever you do, not just depending on the local market. Key project experience and accomplishment. Food safety systems, assessment and policy in 5 Eastern European countries, HACCP training and technical assistance in Eastern Europe, and 5 countries in Southern Africa and Nicaragua. How many people here do not know what HACCP means? Okay, I'll give you a definition. HACCP is Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points, is a management system in which food safety is addressed through analysis and control of biological, chemical, and physical hazards from raw material production, procurement, and handling to manufacturing, distribution, and consumption of the finished product. Now, we all know that recently there was a problem with some jalapeno peppers or tomatoes or something. Occasionally there's been something about spinach, ground beef. Somewhere in the processing, there were failures in the system to be sure that the food that was being processed was kept clean, right temperature, and so forth. And this is what HACCP is. Training people in this particular type of assessment or analysis, and then putting in place a system and then a checklist. Then they check that off whenever it's been done. They keep records of what they've been doing. And that's what we've been doing in a number of different places in Eastern Europe, Moldova, Ukraine, is a program also in Armenia, and then in Southern Africa it included the Republic of South Africa, Namibia, Mozambique, Zambia, Malawi, and also in Nicaragua. And the training they received is certified training, internationally recognized certified training, so they can have the same standard of training that we have in our own country. Educational outreach and extension in Ukraine. An extensionist went to Ukraine and worked with farmers there for several years in part of the program, Larry Brock. He worked with a number of farmers. I think they were primarily poultry producers. This is a picture. This is value-added processing implant technical training and assistance. This particular picture is in Mozambique. It's the women's cooperative there, and it is provided training on how to improve the processing of broilers. Several hundred chicken broiler producers, primarily women, organize themselves into a cooperative, and this processing plant is part of that cooperative, and this is part of our program we had there a few years ago. It just ended a little over 2 years ago, and this was improving the processing of the poultry so that whoever would buy those broilers would have a better product. People in the store would have a product with a longer shelf life, and people who buy it wouldn't necessarily have to cook it quite as quickly because it's been processed in such a way that it's cleaner and safer. Here we are. This is a beef cattle improvement. We've got a program in Indonesia and Honduras. These cattle are actually in Honduras. So it's not just the processing, but it's at the farmer level. Because, as we know, we mentioned this a month ago, too many animals receive things they should not receive, and then they end up in our food supply, like antibiotics. So farmers need to be raising their animals and feeding their animals such that, that whatever the product that they produce, whether it be milk or meat, does not have something in it that we don't really need to have in it, like antibiotics or other chemicals. There's nothing wrong with antibiotics if they're used properly. That's the problem. The question is how they're going to be used. Now, this is LSU. Now we're back in Louisiana, but all of these students came from several different countries. This is a program that Michelle coordinates. Now, I say internship from Zamorano and and that's in Thailand. Michelle, I'm going to let Michelle talk a little bit about the work that she's doing and explain who some of these students are, because some of them are here now on campus.
So although this program isn't exactly like the different projects that Joe has been describing that focus on an underlying theme of supporting global food security, indirectly, the internships will contribute to food security because all of the students that come from either of the programs are agricultural focused. Zamorano University is a Pan-American agricultural school in Honduras, and Casetsart University, it's a more extensive university. It has more subject material, but the students that come for the internship come through the agricultural colleges that are with Casetsart University in Thailand. There are separate programs. There's a summer program for both the Zamorano and Casetsart University. They come for a 3-month period, and the students that are selected, they'll work with individual faculty that are focusing on research that match the interests of the students that come for the program. So their visits allow them the opportunity to see what type of research is being done in agricultural in the U.S., how it compares to what they're doing back in their home countries. It allows them the cultural experience to know and get a better feel of what the U.S. culture is, have a better understanding of what's going on in our country so they know firsthand as opposed to what they hear in the media or through other people, which establish longer relationships that will, the hope, build better cooperation between our countries in the future, which, because they're in agricultural, can lead to food security, because the hope is that they'll continue the cooperative relationships that they've met with students and faculty while they've been in the country. And then the other program that the Zamorano University has is a spring program where students who are in their final year at their university come from January to April. And we have 5 students that are currently here in that program, and they again work with different faculty in research areas, and a lot of the students have the chance to continue the thesis work that they're working on in their home country, and some of them actually will go in and sit in on classes. And LSU's personal hope is that many of the students will come back for a graduate program or a PhD program, and then return home and be able to continue working with the expertise that they've acquired while they've been here. So that's the main purpose of it.
have a couple of things to hand out. Let's see. Project experience and accomplishments continuing here. PPP, partnership, private-public partnerships to combat avian influenza in Zambia and Togo. I was coordinating this program up until January. Over 2.5 years ago, 2 countries were selected, one that had experienced outbreaks of avian influenza and one that had not. Togo had experienced outbreak, and Zambia had not, and up to now has not yet. Togo has had 2 outbreaks. The program there was to develop social networks, training on best management practices, how to prevent the spread of poultry diseases, which can include avian influenza, and bringing together everyone involved in the value chain, everyone that's involved in the movement of poultry and poultry products together in the same room to develop a social network so that if something happens, they know what they need to do. And it happened in Togo. On the 4th and 5th of September 2008, when we were recovering from hurricane here, in Togo, the social network was meeting. There was an outbreak on Monday morning. The following Monday, the 8th. And they had people at that meeting that were in the local police. There were people there from the transport union. There were people there involved with marketing chickens and poultry in the markets. There were poultry producers that were there. There were government veterinarians. There were private veterinarians, all meeting together, discussing avian influenza and how to prevent its spread in case there was an outbreak. Well, 4 days later, this wasn't their first meeting. This was one. They had several meetings before that meeting. But this is just part of the network. They'd had their periodic meetings, and then Monday there was an outbreak. So people had their cell phones. They got on the cell phones and they spread the word real quick. This is what we got to do. And Togo is a country that's only about 50 miles wide and 250 miles long. So it's about twice the Oklahoma Panhandle or something, you know. So you're never far from the border. So that's why they're very concerned with having people that are at the border crossings involved in it. And then transport can easily cross the border. So that's why the transporters were involved too. So lots and lots of people were involved in Togo. I'm sending out, you can pass this brochure around. It was developed by the social network there. It's all in French. And then also what has been produced, they have not, fortunately, have never identified, didn't have an outbreak of avian influenza in Zambia. But they're concerned with best management practices, particularly for people who are only raising even a few chickens. Because it doesn't take too many chickens to spread the disease, because somebody goes to somebody's house, picks up a chicken, takes it to market, it's given to somebody else, they're in contact with other people who have chickens, and the disease can easily be spread that way. And here's a manual that was recently made that's being distributed to a number, to the project, to a number of farmers in Zambia. It's part of the program. Rice production, processing, rice oil for energy in Senegal, Mali, Liberia, India, and Sri Lanka. The next picture shows experience in Liberia. This picture was taken by Jonathan last month. This particular research station, Ag Research Station, is not far from Cuttington University, and it was funded a number of years ago. I've forgotten exactly how many years ago. LSU AgCenter worked with the Liberians, funded by USAID, to develop this particular rice research station in Liberia. And this picture was just taken last month by Jonathan. And it may be included in different ways in some of the programs and strategic planning that's been going on at that particular university, Cuttington. Issues and limitations towards sustainably linking our expertise with needs. Institutional constraints, security, travel warnings. LSU and most other universities don't particularly like and don't want their faculty and staff to travel places where it's insecure. And it's often questioned whether or not you can do good work where there's insecurity, long-term, have a long-term development work where there's insecurity. And wherever there's a State Department travel warning for a country, we generally, I say we, do not recommend and put together a program to go there. And as I said, the university really doesn't like to approve faculty and staff to go to places that are deemed insecure. As we know, our embassies are tried to be responsible for all American citizens, and under those circumstances, they would rather have fewer than more citizens to deal with, and therefore somebody coming from the outside who doesn't know the place is going to have, more likely going to have problems than somebody who's already there. But even where people are already there, they might not be encouraged to stay, or they have to know they have to limit whatever they do just to be secure. So that's some of the things we have to keep in mind. Response to donor availability, mandates, and other circumstances, the time frame and closure. Very often we learn about an opportunity for a grant, and we only have a month or 45 days to put together a proposal. And we all know that the faculty, staff of LSU are doing lots of things, doing lots and lots of things. So sometimes, given the time frame, it's very difficult to put together a program. To even start it off, even everything else is okay. Unforeseen, again, there could be security problems. You start doing something in the country, and then the situation becomes insecure. This happened in Indonesia with the USDA program, helping people with cattle there. I think I mentioned it earlier. We had a picture of the cattle in Honduras. But this happened in Indonesia. Indonesians did come here and were interested in importing or exporting from here and importing their country some semen and other things. But it was very difficult to continue the project because, as we know, Indonesians had some problems with terrorism. And this is a concern. Also, a particular program where we saw the women in Mozambique at the Women's Cooperative with that broiler they were wrapping up. That particular program was curtailed. It was to be a 5-year program, and ended up being about 3.5 because funding was limited and we had to limit the time on it. And then, as I've already mentioned, faculty and international staff time constraints. There's almost only so much time to put in a proposal, and lots of things are ongoing. So sometimes it's hard to put things together, get all the pieces in place, and get a proposal out the door in time because we're all busy doing a number of other things. Impact. I just have a couple of comments in the conclusion. Employment, income, public health. A little over 40 years ago, when I was joining the Peace Corps, I heard this Chinese proverb, and of course at that time it was gender insensitive because it said, give a man a fish and he will eat for one day, or teach a man a fish and he will be able to feed himself every day. Well, 40 years later, we know what's happened. Too many people have learned how to fish. The rivers are all overfished. The lakes are all overfished. Our seas are all overfished. So this proverb is no longer recommended. Now it is teach people to be gender sensitive to raise fish. No longer give people fish, teach them how to raise fish. And I want to quote just a few lines from President Kennedy's inaugural address, getting back to this 1961 change in American foreign aid policy, separating military from non-military and development of USAID. This came directly from his inaugural address. To those peoples in the huts and villages across the globe struggling to break the bonds of mass misery, we pledge our best efforts to help them help themselves for whatever period is required. Not because the communists may be doing it, but because we seek, not because we seek their votes, but because it is right. And this gets back to ethics again. We're talking about doing what's right. And this is a statement from that speech. I got to meet Peace Corps volunteers in the 60s that were in different parts of the world when Kennedy, just after Kennedy started the Peace Corps, and they were there when he was assassinated. And many persons in those countries felt that their president had been killed. But if you read this, he's addressing people in Hudson villages in the globe. So he was addressing a global audience. And people heard that, and many people internalized that, thinking that Kennedy was their president. I don't know if you have any questions. Unfortunately, my colleagues aren't here, but I'll try my best if you have any questions or suggestions on what we have presented today.
Yeah, I have a question, or actually a suggestion. Maybe you could explain that the AgCenter actually partners with organizations in countries, so you don't send a dozen LSU faculty, just to maybe give an example of how that happens so they can understand.
Oh, okay. For example, when I mentioned this HACCP, hazard analysis and critical control point training that we had in a number of different countries, in Southern Africa, in South Africa, we partnered with Stellenbosch University. In Mozambique, it was a national university, Edouard Monglin. In Namibia, it was the University of Namibia. In Zambia, it was a local non-government organization, ZATEC, Zambia Agro Technical Business what is it? Company or something. I forgot exactly what that means, ZATEC. But we partner with subcontracts, organizations, universities. In Togo, in Togo, it is a government agency that is responsible for agricultural extension, that we partner with in Togo for avian influenza. For Zambia, for that particular avian influenza, it's Africare, an American-based NGO, Africare, non-governmental organization. In Armenia, it's a locally based organization that private type consultancy organization with people who are highly trained in food processing, food security, and they're getting more training and getting certified training so they can give certified training. I'm trying to think. Other instances.
So it's rarely LSU doing the training, it's LSU facilitating.
Well, trainers went from LSU.
Okay.
For some things. See, we had, for social networking, we had a faculty that went for that. We had somebody from the AgCenter go for avian influenza, that's not as practices. When it came for the in-country training for the certified trainers, that was arranged through Texas A&M University because they're the ones responsible for the International HACCP Alliance. Dr. Michael Moody from the Food Science Department, he was doing a lot of the training for HACCP for fish, seafood. He went and did a lot of the training. And we brought some of those people from those Southern Africa universities and Nicaragua, in Nicaragua here, for training in Texas that was taking place in Texas. So they could become certified trainers. So it's kind of a mismatch. I mean, sometimes it's people going there from LSU, sometimes it's people going, I say there, overseas, those different places, from the International HACCP Alliance that work out through Texas A&M or Southern University. And of course, people coming for training here, and of course there's the internship like Zamorano, that there's that type of arrangement as well. So we have letters of intent, memorandums of understanding with different universities as well to cooperate and carry out things. Because like with Cuttington University in Liberia, we have a letter of intent to work with them, and with the University of Liberia as well. And we had a subcontract for that particular program that involved HACCP with Stellenbosch University, but we also have a letter of intent to work with them in other areas, not just that particular program. And we're also developing other letters of intent with Banaras Hindu University that's in India, for possibility of working with them in a Center of Excellence for Agriculture. Another question or comment?
I have a question. When you're looking at potential projects, how do you weigh issues of sustainability and issues of productivity? How does that balancing act work?
Okay, we try to build capacity of partners, partner organizations. And this is institutional capacity, this is technical capacity, it's many different. And we've chosen organizations because they already have some sort of a track record, quote unquote. See what I'm saying? So they may be sustainable without us. See what I'm saying? However, we're able to increase their capacity to do more than they're already doing. You see what I'm saying? And maybe do a better job of what they're doing.
I think another issue is when we decide which projects to choose. One project isn't necessarily more sustainable than another one. It's how you develop it to increase its sustainability. So as an organization and working with the other organizations, when you're creating the plan of how you're going to have the project be developed, it's kind of up to the institutions to be able to create something that they believe will be as sustainable as possible when it's being developed. It's not always written into how this project has to go. They have the guidelines of it has to touch on this aspect of food production or this aspect of technical training, but when you're developing it, it's up to the different organizations to say, well, if we do it in this manner, it'll be more sustainable than if we were to execute it in another way.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I guess that wasn't exactly what I was trying to ask.
Okay.
So maybe it is interesting, but it wasn't what I was trying to get at.
You got two more chances.
Okay. I was thinking more and I know almost nothing about international agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
I know one of the issues that I've read some about in the United States is, Carl works with slow food movements. And then there's organic food production, and then there's industrial food production. So, when you're looking at potential projects, is it, how do those sorts of issues come into play? Would a project that's focusing on helping local farmers do organic production be preferable to a program that helps larger scale farmers use pesticide heavy production, that sort of?
Our office doesn't distinguish between those two. When we're looking for projects, we try and find what we think we have the best expertise to be able to successfully execute. And if we have the time and capacity to be able to develop a proposal to submit to win it. We don't say, oh, that one is focusing on small farmers, so we want to go after it more than this one that's focusing on a large scale production.
Okay.
Is that right, Joe? Am I answering that right?
Yeah, here's the thing. Donors, most of our donors are concerned with helping the small farmers.
Okay.
And therefore, the donors kind of decide.
Mm-hmm.
When you say donor, are you talking U.S. government?
USAID, it could be different organizations. See what I'm saying? We have an application in with this university in Africa through even the Soros Foundation. George Soros, the Open Society.
Oh,
And there are different types of possible funding. We haven't done anything yet with the Gates Foundation, but so far it's been primarily funding through the U.S. government, whether it's the USDA or USAID, because they do support a lot of agricultural type of programs. And they're, generally speaking, they're in contact with the governments of those countries, and they work with what the governments of those countries want as well. And most of the countries are really trying to increase the productivity of the small farmers, because the small farmers make up the majority of the people in the country. I mean, in most of those countries, or almost probably all of them, except South Africa, you see. And so therefore, we're not choosing the big farmers and neglecting the small farmers, but our donor has not chosen the large farmers, so we're obviously not going to we're not going to completely ignore them, because there are situations where they can be involved in mentoring. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And we've even been involved with that in one program. In Namibia, there was a mentoring program of some of the more commercial, quote unquote, farmers, mentoring those that were less commercial.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a related question. I look at the U.S. government, Foreign Agricultural Service, USAID, they basically are promoting agricultural industries in the United States in many cases. And that's what the Foreign Ag Service basically does. It took me like 10 years to finally figure that out. But that's what they're, and even the government basically is promoting, the industrial agriculture system. It's related to your question. What is your perception of some of the newer projects? Are they becoming more sustainable and more environmentally friendly, or are we still in the green revolution mode of having whatever scale farmers buying fertilizer, buying seed, buying pesticides that are imported into the country? And that's one thing I haven't had a chance to look at.
The problem is that our government doesn't support agriculture very much at all. Most of our foreign aid is not for agriculture, okay? Not for farmers, not for agriculture to begin with. The other problem is that with few exceptions, farmers do not have access to fertilizer, insecticides, improved seeds. They don't have access to that because they don't have credit for any of those things. Okay? Now there are programs we're working with in Africa for rice, and there's the locally based Africa Rice Institute that's developing local varieties of rice for West Africa and other parts of Africa, varieties that are there, okay? Now, so far, the question is, that hasn't been commercialized yet, and nobody, as far as I know, no large company has come in, because these are not hybrids. They haven't been developing yet hybrids to sell to farmers, okay? And until, that means farmers get the seed and they can keep the seed. You see what I'm saying? I mean, so far the programs with rice, for example, is that farmers, as far as I know, are receiving the seed and they can keep the seed.
And they're not based on a high input of fertilizer.
Well, the problem is that there's no credit for that.
Yeah.
So unless they have to save their own money. Now, there are programs to develop private, small-scale marketers of farmer inputs. The Gates Foundation has done a little bit of this. Some other people have done a little bit of this. We're talking about a few thousand farmers benefiting, but in Africa, we're talking about millions of farmers. And so millions and millions of farmers don't have access to any credit. So therefore, they don't have the money to go out and buy insecticide, and they don't have the money to go buy fertilizer, or very little, or a lot of improved seeds in most cases. Now, these programs are slowly being developed by a number of different organizations, and some of us from our government. But our government, if you look at what our government's programs have been, most of them are not for agriculture. They're not for food production.
Well, most is military. Most of
but if we're talking about non-military,
Yeah,
I mean, see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's lots and lots of money going into governance. There's money for health. I could say to not necessarily to strengthen the local health systems of those countries, not necessarily, but for health, for AIDS prevention and for treatment, good governance, democracy building, a number of things which aren't directly in education, that aren't directly tied to agriculture. Now, if somebody's sick, they can't go farming, obviously. And people, when they get sick, go to the hospital, somebody has to go with them and feed them and take care of them and be sure they get their treatment, or they won't survive. So that means that person can't be out working the fields. So health is an issue that's very, very important that we don't think about as much, partly because we don't have to worry about it as much because people were healthier here. But there, in most places, somebody gets sick, family members have to go to the hospital and stay with them. They have to take them food every day. They have to be sure they get treatment. If they need a medicine, they've got to go to the pharmacy and buy it someplace. Maybe it's not at the hospital. Maybe it's around town someplace. They've got to do all kinds of stuff that we don't even think about. So therefore, they can't be out on the farm, doing whatever they got to do so their crops will grow or their animals will be good. Now, education's the same thing. There's a lot of different weaknesses in the educational systems, and our government is working in different ways to strengthen all kinds of education, from primary through university level. A lot of effort encouraging girls, more and more girls to be in school, more and more girls to attend school all the way to the university, scholarship programs, different types of programs. So there's an awful lot of stuff, and agriculture is just one little piece of the picture, and often it's one of the smallest.
I have a comment. I don't have the experience or expertise to know the history of how it's changed, but a couple of the really big draft requests for proposals that our office has been looking at, both of them have written in that when you're developing the program, that considerations for environmental conservation needs to be considered as the plan for the country's decided. Now, what that means as far as actually having positive environmental impacts and how much that's going to play in, I don't really know. It could just be written in to make it look good and be like, oh yes, we care, but it might not actually have a large impact. But I have noticed that they've been putting in within the proposals like, oh, well, we'll focus on this and try and make that a consideration when you're developing.
And what are the young people saying who you're seeing every summer and every spring? I mean, are they... It's exciting to see young people from other countries coming to learn and returning and taking their skills back.
The students that I've been working with, when they've come and when they leave, just like everyone in agriculture, they have their different opinions of what they think are going to be better practices. I say a lot of them care about the environmental implications, but I also think a lot of, at least the students that have been coming in from Somerano that I've talked to, a lot of them really want to become successful, so they're thinking of what type of practices they can do that will help them have a good production facility. So it just depends on the individual and what their focus is and what they want to do with what they're studying.
Do you prefer brown or white?
It doesn't matter.
Here's some more, this a little more detailed information about some of the things that have been ongoing. People want them, they don't want to have to have them. But a lot of this stuff's on the website.
Is climate change affecting the programs you're working with or how you're planning as a...
We've been seeing a lot of solicitations going out that have climate change type projects.
Okay.
We haven't.
There's more and more of this popping up.
It's a very current theme.
Okay.
Now, you know that LSU does have a climate change project
No, I wasn't aware of that.
for America.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We just assume that it's going to take place. We assume that things are going to get worse. More floods, more droughts, severe floods, severe droughts, severe hurricanes, and therefore we need to prepare for all of these things because we just assume that that's the way it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, disaster preparedness, improving on weather forecasting and weather collection of data, and so they have better data to study and to understand. This is a part of a program, $2 or $3 million, It's the sub-region of the United States. It includes Oklahoma and Louisiana. University of Oklahoma and LSU together have a joint grant, and it involves other states. And a lot of it has to do with involvement of preparation for drought, floods, and that will be more severe, and hurricanes that will be more severe as well. This is how, so people, as we know, there are a lot of people who don't believe in climate change. They don't believe we're causing it. Maybe it's happening, but we're not causing it, they would say. But the problem is that it's hard to argue and say, well, we don't need better preparation for our hurricanes. We don't need, we do. We probably need better preparation for floods and droughts as well. Therefore, whether or not we're having climate change or not, those persons can't say you shouldn't do that project. See what I'm saying? This is how they get around that. Because as we know, one of the prominent senators from Oklahoma doesn't believe whatsoever.
Yeah. He doesn't mind taking the check, but...
Very good. Any other questions? I'd like to thank Joseph and Michelle for being here today. Thank you for coming.